to Minister George Freeman. George.
Thank you, Mr Davis. It's a great pleasure to serve under your chairmanship and, if I may say, a great pleasure to be back on the front bench to make the case in this country for science and technology and to respond to my honourable friend, the member for Don Valley, who has done his constituency and constituents a service by raising these important issues, if I may say, in exactly the spirit of our late and lamented colleague, Sir David Davis. We need in this place constituency MPs who speak for the fears, worries, anxieties and concerns of their constituencies, as he has just done very eloquently. And I hope I'll be able to address some, if not all, of the points he's made, but to reassure him that they're well made and well heard and important to the government as we set out our plans for the UK to be an AI powerhouse. If I may, Mr Davis, perhaps I could just start by saying in this new role as Minister for Science, Research and Innovation, I'm framing it in around two key projects. The first, the mission to be a science superpower. I'd argue, in fact, we in many ways already are, but we need to maintain that for the ability to grow a modern, innovative, prosperous and high-skilled economy. But crucially, the second part, to make sure that we build off the back of this pandemic and actually off the back of the opportunities created by Brexit and the challenge of debt through the global financial crisis and the pandemic itself, a much more innovative, productive, high-skilled and competitive economy by harnessing technology and innovation to make the UK an innovation nation. And fundamental to my mission is to make sure that the benefits currently enjoyed, not just, but very heavily enjoyed in the Golden Triangle, are spread around the country so that we can build clusters of new sectors, new jobs, new companies, new technologies all around this country, in Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, strengthening the union, but also in those parts, constituencies like mine, not 40 miles from Cambridge, but feeling often 100 years from Cambridge, and constituencies like his that hear of this technology revolution but don't see the opportunities on their own doorstep. So I'm grateful to him for raising so fluently the issues that he has. Let me just say, Mr Davis, that of course we are already using AI in a whole raft of parts of our society and economy to huge public benefit. In drug discovery, where I myself in my own career, but also as former Minister for Life Science, have seen the incredible power of AI software to be able to look at genomic and phenotypic records and to very quickly, in a way that no number of scientists on their own could do, to identify opportunities for new drug discovery or to target drugs at the right patients, which has huge benefits for patient safety. In cybersecurity, where AI is right on the front line of our ability to counter some quite mischievous and dark forces, both in terms of national security and in terms of our economy and economic fraud. In terms of the environment, where AI is already now playing a crucial role in, for example, in the agri-tech sector, helping us to identify where we can apply chemicals in isolated parts of a crop and a field by using AI with satellite data, so that we're not spraying a whole crop, a whole field, but literally using AI to identify by field patterns and visual optics where chemicals need to be applied. And in fact, the use of AI in plant genomics is allowing us to develop a whole raft of new drought-resistant and disease-resistant crops that will allow us to help sustainable development. In areas like air traffic control, where, thankfully, huge computing power is applied to make sure that planes never bump into each other. It's important we have pilots as well when there's an emergency, but actually AI, at the heart of our electronic air traffic control system, is keeping us all safe, and in a number of other ways, including in the games sector, which is a huge driver of innovation in this country and of opportunities, often rather below the horizon. I dare say there's probably a cluster of games entrepreneurs in the Don Valley, and the gaming industry actually in this country is huge and is driving a lot of innovation in AI that then has applications in both healthcare and broader industry. But he's raised a really important point about public trust and confidence. I can be, and I am, very positive about the importance of this technology for creating opportunities and jobs. But crucially, the public must be with us, and they must have confidence in our regulatory framework. And I'm very glad that he referenced the TIGA report, the Task Force for Innovation, Growth and Regulatory Reform, that I led with the Honourable Member for Chingford for the Prime Minister, in which we argue that our leaving the EU is an opportunity actually for the UK not to race to the bottom, but actually to race to the top in setting values-based regulation for innovation that reflects the values of the people of this country. and actually in a whole raft of new technology sectors, the world is grappling with how do you regulate AI, how do you regulate autonomous vehicles, how do you regulate nutraceuticals, functional foods, clinical trials, digital health. And we are respected internationally as a setter of standards. And they need to be, as he's made clear, embedded in the values that go with that Union Jack around the world. And if we can regulate with values in a way that supports innovation, I'm very confident that his constituents will benefit. And of course, this goes right to the heart, Mr. Davis, of the Prime Minister's and the Chancellor's really historic commitment. I think it's the first time in my life I've heard such a strong commitment from Conservative leaders that we will end the low-wage economy, reliant on overseas labour, but also reliant on low wages in this country. And the only way we will do that is by harnessing innovation to create a higher, a more productive, more competitive economy. And that, in the end, is the way to raise the living standards of all of our constituents, his and mine. And I, having heard the Chancellor and the Prime Minister at the party conference announce that groundbreaking commitment, I'm not sure it's yet sunk in, that this party is absolutely determined to raise the living standards of people around this country, to raise wages, and to move from what has been a 40, 50-year cycle of an economic boom based on very cheap labour. And I think that's good news for his constituents as well as mine. And just as the computing revolution led to huge fears that we would see the automation of everything and the mass redundancy, in fact, the UK has become a huge global software and computing power. Vast numbers of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs created. And I'm confident if we deal with the issues he raises and get the regulation and the skills environment right, we will similarly become a powerhouse in creating a whole series of new industries in AI. So let me try and deal with the important points he's raised on skills, on public trust, on levelling up and the importance of making sure these technologies do create jobs all around the country, values and security. In fact, I'm on my way this afternoon to the Pacific Forum in Portsmouth to join leaders from across the Asia-Pacific ASEAN economies to highlight the UK's commitment through our Global Science Superpower mission to make sure, precisely to his point, that there's an international framework for safe use of AI and that we use our joined-up liberal democratic economic heft and values to make sure that the West is safe in developing these technologies without inadvertently leaving ourselves open to dark forces. Let me just summarise, Mr. Davis, where we stand and why this is such an opportunity. I mean, at the moment, the UK ranks, believe it or not, third in the world in terms of development and deployment of AI technologies, behind only the USA and China. I mean, that is an extraordinary global advantage. This is going to be as transformational as computing, and we're currently in bronze medal table in the Olympics. So we have a huge lead, which it is important that we don't drop. And it's important that we build on in order to build that prosperous economy. A third of Europe's AI companies are here in the UK, and that's twice as many as any other European country. We're also third in the world for AI investment, behind only the US and China, attracting twice as much venture capital investment into AI companies as France or Germany. So we're in a very strong place in terms of the global race for harnessing AI. I want to turn to the skills points he's made because they are very important and the government takes them seriously. Since the AI sector deal that we launched in 2018, we've been making concerted efforts to improve the skills pipeline, not just to make sure that those key, vital, high technology skills are there for industry, but to make sure that all have an opportunity, his constituents and mine, to participate in this economy. And that's why we've had an increased focus on reskilling and upskilling, so we ensure that there is, where there is a level of displacement, there's redeployment rather than unemployment. And that's why, through the Office for AI and the Office for Students, we funded 2,500 more postgraduate conversion courses, and that includes particularly for near and non-STEM background students, and the 1,000 scholarships for people from underrepresented backgrounds, particularly women, black and disabled students, and those courses are available across the UK. And as he has referenced himself, Sheffield Hallam University within the Sheffield City region is actually leading in this and is one of those universities delivering those courses, which are hugely popular, by the way, with students. And you, honourable members, although I see there aren't any from the opposition here at the moment, honourable members on our side will be pleased to remember that at the recent Conservative Party conference, the Chancellor announced that this programme is going to be doubled, creating 2,000 more scholarships. South Yorkshire is actually quite a powerhouse in AI, Sheffield University, but also the 16 centres for doctoral training in AI across the country, of which Sheffield is one, training 1,000 more PhDs, and the Sheffield Centre specialising in speech and language technologies, an area where the university has long preeminence. And like so much of the UK, South Yorkshire is in the process of reinventing itself and its own economy, and I have every confidence that it'll do it as well as everywhere else, and not least because of Sheffield Robotics, a leading company and employer in that region. And Sheffield's Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre currently offers over 300 apprenticeship places to local job seekers in the AI sector. So there's a lot, I think, to be proud of and confident of in the region. We're also seeing applications of AI at the Centre for Child Health Technology in Sheffield as part of the Olympic Legacy Park, where AI is being put to use to assist clinicians in identifying tumours via scanning. And in the National AI Strategy, the government has committed to support the National Centre for Computing Education to ensure that there's a wider reach and access to AI courses for people all around the country. The Honourable Member has mentioned the importance of government gripping this strategically, and I wanted just to reassure him on that. The Council for Science and Technology wrote to the Prime Minister in 2013 to advise on what it called the coming age of algorithms and the need for new research to look into these matters. The government created then the Alan Turing Institute, which is now the national hub of expertise on AI and data science. And following the independent AI review in 2017, we created the Office for AI and now the Independent AI Council. And we did also announce at the time the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation. This is really important and goes right to the heart, I think, of some of the concerns my honourable friend made, that if we're going to lead in the creation of the harnessing of these new technologies, then we need to lead in the regulation based on values and ethics and reflect those, as the honourable member has done here today in his speech. And I'm very pleased that that Data Ethics and Innovation Centre was a recommendation, Mr Davis, actually from the Royal Society and the British Academy in their separate data governance report. And earlier this year, to improve public discourse on AI, the CDI engaged widely with the public and published their findings in June. So we are committed to try and grow that conversation. And of course, they recommended that government should develop a standard for transparency on algorithms in the public sector, which I'm delighted to say is work now close to completion. We have to lead this through the public sector as well as the private, and that again speaks to the importance of values. I want to touch finally on the international dimension because it is vital, and I can reassure him that in my first 4 weeks I've already chaired meetings with other Western democracies on the importance of research security, because AI can be used as well for industrial espionage and for intellectual property theft, and it's an issue we're taking very seriously, and I'm jointly responsible with Minister Philp at DCIS for the Office for AI, which develops a cross-government approach. And as he's referenced, the National AI Strategy sets all of that out. We have required regulators such as the ICO, the CMA, the FCA and Ofcom to specifically consider the risks and benefits of AI within their sectors. And earlier this year, through the CDI and the Office for Artificial Intelligence, we set out with other regulators a project to remedy skills gaps in terms of knowledge of AI in the regulatory landscape. Every regulator will need to be thinking about how it uses AI and the risks of AI in its sector. Perhaps I can just close by saying internationally we've set up the Global Partnership on AI, the GPAI, the first multilateral forum, and we co-chair the Data Working Group. The UK is playing a leading role in international discussions on AI ethics and potential regulations, including at the Council of Europe, UNESCO and the OECD, which is partly why I'm going this afternoon to the Pacific Forum. Time is against me, Mr Davis, but I hope I've addressed some of the points that my honourable friend has made and reassure him that we take them very seriously. We'll only harness the benefits of this technology to create those hundreds of thousands of jobs if we bring the public with us, which we're committed to doing.
Thank you, Minister.